All right, everyone, this is just going to be a little bit of a roundtable. We have nothing prepared. It's more of you guys get to talk to Chris and to anybody else. We've got a bunch of experts here in creator monetization anyway. Should probably just bring everybody up on stage. Here comes Fahad and Ant, who know a lot about creator monetization too. But just to get started, as we think about this here, Chris Withers, who's founder and CEO of Clickit. Clickit allows and helps creators launch products with restaurants and chefs. Did I say that right?
Perfect.
And did a fun session talking about shoppertainment earlier this week. What we really want to do is just sit around and chat about alternate monetization opportunities for creators. So let's kind of start. I mean, I have a couple questions that I put somewhere around here. But really on new ways to get paid. So what's going on with AdSense? Why do we need new ways to get paid?
Yeah, I think it's pretty funny. I think like all the TikTokers just left, which is somewhat hilarious, right? Because like the short form content war is the reason that like creators aren't getting paid anymore.
Right, yeah, totally.
So it's like very ironic that they all just like stood up and just like left the room because they probably should have stayed and they could have figured out how to make more money. So, you know, just before I get into it, right, like, you know, my name's Chris. I work with a bunch of creators. I work mostly with YouTubers who have audiences north of 15 million subscribers, but certainly shy of the you know, the big figure Mr. Beast type characters sitting north of that 100, right? I think that, you know, the point Jim's making is a great one, right? You know, we're seeing this transition of content. You know, we've gone from this sort of like, I guess, very long form content that Hollywood was producing. You know, you've got movies, you've got all this stuff. You see the same celebrity day in, day out, Shirley Temple, you name it. We then moved into this era of kind of, you know, I guess the more Hollywood blockbusters where you have this kind of rotating cast of characters. Then we moved into the sort of platformatization where we had kind of like these engineering platforms democratize access to content. So YouTube, and people could, you know, barriers to entry were less, technology costs came down, so people were filming their own content. And then now we're here like at TikTok, right, where people are making like 15-second videos. Now I think like, you know, what's happening with AdSense, you know, the funniest thing is that like the TikTok Creator Fund basically only pays people 2 to 4 cents per 1,000 views. So it's basically nothing.
By the way, I heard the average payout from a guy who used to run all of this at TikTok 2 weeks ago. He said the average payout from the fund was $5.
Yeah, like it's abysmal, right? Like,
$5.
You know, it's funny. I spent a bunch of time working, you know, with some of the folks at Night Media because like I've got some investors who are signed to that label. For those who don't know, that is Mr. Beast's label. You know, Jimmy's generating like over 1 billion views on this platform and he's getting paid like $10,000. Like it's actually horrific.
TikTok.
On TikTok, yeah. And that's why it's funny because the previous session was like, yeah, like we support all these creators, we do all this stuff. I think that it's like, you know, I'm just being... No, but I'm just being honest, right? Because like I think like algorithmically speaking as well, the platform is geared towards that, right? It's the fungibility of content. Do you actually like watching Mr. Beast who does these kind of crazy videos? Or do you actually like watching PewDiePie play like Minecraft? Or do you just like watching some white guy behind a computer say funny things, right? And so more and more, you know, content creators are understanding that their lifespan is getting much, much, much smaller, right? And as a function of getting smaller, they're now needing to consider alternate revenue streams, right? Now, no longer is it good enough to just like do the ads, do the brand deals, do whatever. It's like now I need to think about, okay, I have this audience. How do I make this audience purchase my products? How do I build products that are relevant, right? And I guess like the funniest thing, you know, me at Clickit, we just want to provide infrastructure or pipes and rails to creators for them to launch new types of products, right? And what's funny, like a lot of these creators, again, you know, they don't have the access to that kind of business acumen or that kind of like, you know, I guess that like financial insight. Like a good example, you know, Mr. Beast, right? I keep using him as the example, but he's so just the exception and not the rule. You know, he's got 150 people working in his team. Like everyone from financial analysts to data trackers to everybody.
To his mom.
Yeah, to his mom, right? By comparison, one of my investors, Laserbeam, you know, he's got 25 million subscribers, huge Fortnite gamer. He has 3 people working for him. One's his brother, who like only finished high school, like good guy, but like, you know, isn't super savvy on the data tools or anything. One's basically his girlfriend, and the other is just like a designer and editor, right? But this guy still has 25 million subscribers. He's commanding a huge audience, but like just has no idea about like what's out there in terms of infrastructure, how to monetize, how to get the most out of it. And so what I think now is that, you know, at the moment we're staring down the barrel of this sort of like, you know, we had this like COVID hype around Web3 and like tools that were going to empower creators and like NFTs and like all this kind of crap mostly. I think now the really big businesses that are going to get built are at this sort of intersection between both the digital and the real world, right? So how can you get that pipes and rails infrastructure to creators to support their business, to support their brand, and make the most of that short time frame?
Well, you know what I think is interesting, you bring up the size of the time frame, or the length of the time frame, not the size, is that as it gets shorter, yes, you need to figure out how to monetize during your life cycle, or during the peak of your life cycle, but also it's a push to find businesses that are sustainable once you've reached the end of your life cycle too. And you know, we had an interesting lunch with William Balbine, who spoke in the other room at 10 a.m., Ivan and I, talking about interesting ways that he's thinking about enabling creators to get pieces of referral businesses long after they, you know, forever, as long as the referrals that come in are there. And so, you know, it was a really interesting thing to think about, especially when Jasper Donut walks in the room and we start thinking about how he's going to refer. No, hi, Jasper. You think about beer. But think about recurring revenue for creators and what that's like.
Yeah, so I think that this is a super fascinating space, Jim, and I think that, like, you know, creator longevity, as I kind of point out, right, it's getting shorter and shorter. It's basically, you know, it's three kind of scenarios you typically see play out. The first is just like burn out and explode. I just like do something stupid, I make some stupid video, I say some stupid thing, I'm over, it's done. All the taps get turned off, I lose all my revenue, and I just like fall into the, you know, internet abyss, and like nobody remembers who I am, and that's fine. Option two is a fascinating one I've seen best executed by Nasiah Yassin, who's also one of my investors. He has the channel Nas Daily. He's done a fascinating thing. I don't know if anyone here watches Nas Daily. It's a great little channel, you know, got really big on Facebook video. That was like their sort of main channel, still consistently their best performing channel. He's done a thing where, like, I think on one of his last trips back to Israel, he like found a kid who's very similar to him, like almost uncannily similar, like a bit like a doppelganger. And then he like brought him into the business, and then he teaches him how to do the videos like him. So, you know, like if any of you have seen Nas Daily, and for those who haven't, I'll do a quick impression, but he's like, you'll never believe this man or billionaire, right? Like he has this like really over the top way of doing it. And he just sat this kid down and made him do this like hundreds of times till the kid nailed it. And now he subs him into a lot of the content, right? So he's like built a media business, right? He obviously knows he's the anchor personality, but he's like figured out his like protege, and he's like started putting him more into the content so he can pull himself out. Option three here is really, I think this is most relevant to the gaming type content creators. And that's where you try and like pivot into an esports org. I think the best ones at this fundamentally have been 100 Thieves out of LA. So, you know, the guy who runs that, it's a guy called Nadeshot. He used to be a pro Counter-Strike player. And I mean, now, you know, he's built 100 Thieves into a monstrous organization, right? It's like Sequoia backed. It's worth about $425 million US. Or
at least it was last week.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge.
Still big.
Yeah. So those are the three kind of like ways I think that it plays out.
Well, you know what I think is interesting? One of the models that I think, and we'll get into some of the more tactical brass tacks about different things that you can get and use for monetization, but when I think about the life cycle of a creator, the more you can get to know and have a direct connection with your super fans, with the people who know you best and like you best, and build a long-term relationship with them outside of the platforms themselves, the better. And I'll give you an example, and then I'll talk about a piece of an app that's kind of helping people on it. But you know, someone that I worked with for years and years and years, starting the magazines. He did a TV show on Tech TV. He then went out on his own and did his own video around tech, and he has an audience, you know, Patreon of about, you know, probably 3,000 people that really like what he does. And over the last 15 or 20 years, he's been able to sustainably connect and deliver content to those folks. They trust him. He's funny. He's a geek. And it didn't really grow, and it falls off a little bit. And you know, now he's actually got a full-time job, but he has managed to sustain his ability as a creator and get paid for it for 20 years, which is fascinating. And there is a new app called Super.Fans. I happen to be on their advisory board, but they're really interesting because what they do is they take the analytics for TikTok or for YouTube and other places, and they pull it in and they tell you who are the people who are commenting the most, who are the people connecting the most with you, who are your real true fans out there, and make it easier for you to find them, talk to them, and hopefully convert them into something that's owned by you. So conversion to an owned experience of some level where maybe it's just a Discord you hang out on. But maybe it's something that, using some of the Web3 and other things, they're like tokenized communities or something there. There are things there that will allow you to directly connect and build communities directly with people who want to connect with you, that have found you through your creations.
100%, and that's why, my business, Click It, like, we think that the fastest pathway there is food, right? Like, food is inherently a social activity. It's just fascinating that, like, with the rise of these, like, digital channels and things, like, people tend to typically form, like, more parasocial type relationships. But regardless, like, I think that there are a lot of creators where, food is a fascinating product. You can market it 3 times a day and it's not weird, right? One, there's a better entry point or price point, right? If I have to buy a hoodie or I'm buying something else, it's typically anywhere north of $60 US, right? For food, I mean, depending on market conditions and prices, I could range that anywhere between, $4 US all the way up to $24 US, right? And I can make that an attractive price point. And I think the final, interesting thing about food and connecting with people and things, there's also just like a lot less social capital involved with buying food, right? That sounds super weird, but like good example, again, Naz and I were arguing about this, like before he invested in the company, he's like, Chris, why would I ever sell a burger when I could be selling a course on Naz Academy or selling a t-shirt? And I'm like, dude, listen, man, I like your videos, but these battery t-shirts are so lame. Yeah. Like I would never buy a battery t-shirt. Like it's terrible. But if you were like, hey man, buy the Nusaya falafel wrap, like, and support the channel, and here's also an interesting video. I did a food tour in Israel, and like you can check that out. I'd be like, oh, okay, that's like relevant, it's interesting, and it's cool.
Well, let's talk about food for a minute, because if you think about some of the biggest examples of things that creators have built and sold, the examples that most often come to mind for me are beauty products, skincare products, and food, like Emma Chamberlain coffee, or other things like that, or David Dobrik's Pizza, his new pizza place in LA. So how do you as a creator think about what food items work with your channel and your mission and your vision? And I know you're helping with this, but then how do you find and create things that will appeal to your audience without doing things like selling them, smart water that's dumb?
Yeah, although I think smart water is a pretty good one, like Prime.
Oh, I know.
Prime is killing it.
I'm not making fun of any water
So,
being sold by any creators anywhere.
And I love Liquid Death, great company, right? Like, took water, put it in a can, made it sexy. Unbelievable business, just great. So how do we do it, right? So I think the first thing is, it's all about the data, right? So, for our business, Click It, we don't just do the creator food piece. We actually have next generation point of sale software that we put into all the kitchens. So that's like our Trojan horse. So we have like merchant software. It's a B2B business model. It's a great little SaaS business, pays the bills. But in that process, we get 2 things, right? We get data. So we see everything that's selling in store, out of store, every single channel. And we get density for delivery purposes, right? So again, you've got an audience base. Good example, I'll just keep using it, Mr. Beast, right? His largest audience group in Asia or Southeast Asia is in the Philippines, right? So if he needs delivery coverage there, we've got already 100 merchants in Metro Manila we could deploy his product to. I think the next phase then, in terms of like how you come up with some of this stuff, right? Like we obviously see what's selling and we can recommend that. We typically don't tend to work with foodie creators. We don't like that because they're very particular, right? Like chefs, like all this type of stuff, like don't touch it. You definitely want to work with, again, gamers, live streamers, entertainers, like people who are like pretty easygoing and whose audience base is pretty flexible, right? Like if I'm watching, a gaming live streamer and I'm watching that person 2-3 hours a day, chances are that person's probably happy with just like a basic cookie or like instant noodles or something like that, right? And then so from there, we kind of say to them, cool, how much creative freedom do you want in that process, right? For some of them, they're like, I actually do want to be quite deeply involved. So we have, there's 2 content creators in the Philippines who do have a bit of that foodie background and they've wanted to be intimately involved in that process. On the other end of the spectrum, we work with some Fortnite gamers. They were like, I don't want to be involved at all, man. Just send me the product. We sent it to them. They put it in their mouth. They were like, fantastic. This is great.
Well, and how do you do that on a global basis then? Or is it pretty regional? Because I wonder about a Mr. Beast burger in the Philippines and whether it's really going to taste like a Mr. Beast burger in New Jersey. Actually, I wonder about Mr. Beast burger's consistency across the board anyway. But that's an entirely different issue. How do you find something that's going to appeal to a global audience, but that can be developed and processed and delivered by local chefs or local food creators?
Yeah, super good question. I get this one from investors all the time. So the first big question of the audience is like, have you ever had something that was 10 out of 10 on delivery? Ever? In your whole life? Have you ever ordered on GrabFood and been like, this is life-changing? or ordered on Uber Eats and been like, this is the best.
That's why I go out to eat or
Exactly.
cook myself.
Like it just doesn't happen, right? So it's already like an unfair and unnatural kind of estimate to be like, how do you maintain this level of quality at scale? It's like, dude, even McDonald's can't do that, right? So the way that we think about it at ClickIt is there's really kind of two models we operate. So the first is what we call like a hub and spoke model. So we operate the same way that, let's say, Starbucks would operate. So Starbucks in Singapore, Starbucks in the Philippines, they use a single source food supplier. Typically, it's one called Unilogics. They make X number of products, they only make those products, and then they send them to all the little Starbucks, right? So we can do a similar thing. So we go with the creator, we say, hey man, listen, pumpkin spice cookies, they're going off right now. You're making a Halloween video, it's a spooky Halloween video, we think you should drop a cookie at the same time, it's gonna be great. They go, okay, cool. We go to Unilogics, we go, cool, pull out the recipe, here it is. We need 10,000 units of those cookies, and then we distribute to all the little merchants that we work with. And effectively, it's like a dropship model, right? The cookies are there, they're pre-made, they're pre-built. They heat them up for 5 minutes, put them in the bag, and send them. The second model is very interesting. We call this the repackage model. And this is now what Mr. Beast and his Beast Burger team are doing a lot of in the US. So when they begun, they were working with mom and pop shops because Jimmy liked this narrative that he was like helping everyday business owners like maintain their delivery traffic or their sales volumes during COVID. That ended up just being a QA nightmare, right? And so what he does now is he typically tends to only now focus on working with what we call, effectively the B plus A minus franchise tiers in the US, right? And that's something we do out here in Southeast Asia. So, in the late 90s, early thousands, you had businesses out here like Wendy's, TGI Fridays, Wild Buffalo Wings. Like all these businesses were over franchised out here. Most of them are owned by PE shops or family offices. None of them know how to market themselves, right? However, they've got all the QA processes, they've got all the ability to maintain that quality, maintain that product. So we go to them and say, hey, listen, man, Miss Philippines 2018, she loves spicy wings. She wants to film a video and she wants to release a spicy wing. They go, great. We say, we're going to use only Wild Buffalo Wings to deliver that product, and you're going to take your existing recipe, run a slight tweak to it, and just repackage it. And they go, fantastic.
So for creator, who owns the brand here? Does the creator own the brand and it's just delivered through these various different partners?
Effectively, I mean, I don't want to get too like IP law into this. There is
We got a lawyer right here, by the way.
Yeah, perfect. There's some level of intellectual.
She's
co-creation.
watching us.
Yeah, always. There's some level of like co-creation here, where like typically we'll go to the creator and we'll say, hey, we see this selling. Here's the sort of recipe. By the way, we will kind of control this brand, but we promise not to relaunch that brand or do anything with it without your express like approval. So they typically tend to like that because again, it's similar to kind of like, let's say I make a design on Redbubble or Amazon merch and I sell that. I guess maybe Amazon does this, but Redbubble's not going to typically like re-release stuff without that approval, right?
So, and some of the things I think about, and I'd love to open it up, see if there are questions about items, other items, things, and the other revenue streams for creators. But what about risk of inventory? Like, let's say, your pumpkin spice cookie example, you make 10,000 cookies, they're all out there, and all of a sudden everybody realizes pumpkin cookies suck. What do you do? I hate pumpkin.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question. Inventory risk is.
But who's that risk on? Is it on the creator? Is it on you as a company? Is it on the people who make it?
Yeah, great question. So it's not on the creator. So definitely there's like the consignment risk is held by the merchant and sort of by proxy held by us, right? And then we'll be able to work.
And the merchants know that you like usually do well with the products and they usually sell out. And so they're like, yeah, we'll work with you because we know your track record's
exactly
super good.
Yeah, and then there's lots of different ways we can solve for inventory risk, right? So my sort of background is I was very early at Uber Eats and Grab Food and Gojek, right? So, you can dynamically price, you can do all these things, you do mystery boxes, combos, bundles, like subscription packages. There's sort of N number of ways you can get rid of that stock. Worst case scenario, Jim, you actually just partner. So let's say the creator doesn't do well, right? Let's say the creator, to your point, they release some video, then they release a second video being like, by the way, pumpkin sucks, I hate it, right? And then sales are tanking, we're like, oh God, we have 10,000 pumpkin cookies, right? For us, ClickIt, like the pipes and rails business, we'll just cut that creator. So we'll be like, hey, listen, that's cool. We're resuming that inventory.
Right.
And then we'll actually partner with, let's say, a charity. So we'll go, oh, let's go to the Red Cross or let's go to, a food waste charity and say, hey, buy these cookies. We're discounting these cookies, but all the proceeds of sale are going to this particular charity or this particular cause. And that type of collaboration is also interesting because, there are creators out there that want to do good. And this also provides like another vector, another vehicle for them to do that stuff.
Yeah, interesting. What about quality? I mean, you know, if you're a creator and you say, "Oh, my pumpkin cookies are so good, you should go buy them," and someone goes and buys them, and they're like, they get sick.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. I'm sure you vet people really well and all that, but I'm sure from a creator perspective, having that risk of a third party, you know, we've just been listening all day about creators who want control of everything, right, Jamie? You know, that's going to be tough for creators to give up control in many ways.
Yeah, 100%. So we typically like stay away from products that can cause that, right?
So no raw egg salad.
Yeah,
or
definitely
anything?
not.
Yeah. That sounds gross.
No
I'm sorry.
on-demand sashimi brands in Southeast Asia. That's like not a big one. But you know, again, Jimmy had this problem, and like I was hanging out with, or someone in my team was hanging out with Reed, Jimmy's manager, and he was saying Jimmy still replies to almost like all of the feedback on Twitter, and like it's a toxic trait that he has because he's like a control freak. But people be like, "Dude, my burger wasn't cooked," and Jimmy be like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Like you need to contact like here, and here." Like, so it's definitely difficult. We just tend to not engage with those types of brands. You know, like Beast Burger. Burger's the hardest product to make in food. You've got like a meat product, refrigerated. You have lettuce, vegetable, baked. Like it's terrible. Just do shaker fries.
But the alliteration is great.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
it is great.
Double B's. Double B's.
But he could have done Mr. Beast brownies. Like that would have been, I mean, in the US, that would have been huge, Jim.
Mr. Beast
California,
bubble tea.
Even better. Mr. Beast boba.
Boba. Mr. Beast boba.
Oh, let's go.
Any questions out here on monetization? Yeah, go, Ivan. I don't know why I'm bringing this. We could all just sit in a circle. And...
I think because of the camera filming. So what is your take? What is your take on digital merchandise? Because what Jim asked basically is your quality assurance, last mile delivery, whatever in the physical products, and you're entering the red ocean of the whatever it is. But like Mr. Beast, he has 12 channels probably, and this is kind of a merchandise because he's not doing all the channels and so on. So have you considered doing spin-offs like I don't know, Big Bang Theory, Young Sheldon, or at our time Cheers and Frasier and whatever, you know, some, let's say, podcast about behind the scenes, so you have someone, a member of the crew or something like that, talking about that with every video that happened and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So love that question. I tend to, at the moment, lay low on the whole like Web3 crypto thing at the moment because it detonated and imploded on massive proportions. We have an angle to this at ClickIt. So as part of like every like creator drop that you receive, there's a digital collectible. You don't pay for that, right? So it's like buy a burger, get an NFT for free. It's like a Happy Meal toy. But to your point, you know, there's trackability, there's traceability, there's the ability to unlock behind the scenes content. You can then use that as a governance token, right? So like, you know, let's say it's, I don't know, Ariana Grande does a burger, right? They get all these digital collectibles out in the wild. She goes like, what should we sell next? Like, and everyone could vote with their like little tokens.
McRib.
Yeah, exactly. They could be like, yeah, I want a cookie, I want a donut, I want this, I want that, right? So we definitely like have a lot of high conviction in the whole like the digital sort of merchandise piece and digital collectibles broadly, but we see them more as like a vector for engagement rather than like a thing that you sell openly to people, right? It's like you're buying the food, you're getting something for free that demonstrates you're a super fan and that you want to engage in that community, and there's like rewards associated with that, right? And I think that the spin-off thing, definitely, right? Like the ability for like brands to co-collaborate and do all sorts of crazy stuff, I think it's huge.
I think it's pretty cool that you can, you know, sell boba tea, Beast boba tea, or something with bees in it, and you can get like a digital bee too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you could use those bees to say, yeah, we want, you know, something better.
And I mean,
this starts with a C, not a B.
Yeah, and I mean, it gets crazier, right? Like, I think, you know, you take a group like Blackpink, right? So Blackpink, there's 4 girls in Blackpink. You imagine we launch a brand for each one of the girls, right? You know, you've got Jisoo, you've got Rosie, you've got Lisa, right? And, you know, all of a sudden, each one has their own brand, each one has their own digital collectible. You collect all 4, they combine, right? And then you get a behind-the-scenes access to an exclusive concert or something. Like, that type of reward, I think, that's the sort of like the future state of where commerce is all going to go.
Other questions over here about monetization through goods, services, things that creators can build sustainable businesses out of. Yep, go ahead, Ant.
I mean, obviously you're talking very, very big creators, like 15 mil plus, like this sort of stuff. Like, where do you see, just smaller creators, not even smaller creators, right? Like mil plus type things, 5 mil. Like, can they interact in this world at this scale? And then my favorite part, and Jim, we talked about, like, the middle class or the upper middle class of creators, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they definitely can. I think it's like the method of interaction is super important, right? I think like that's the magic question on everyone's lips. It's like, how do we solve the middle class of the creator economy? I don't claim to have the silver bullet, but the way that I kind of think about it is that you bundle up a lot of those creators together and you smash a bunch of fandoms together. So for instance, like let's say that there's like a bunch of enthusiasts for like spooky videos. Like I know the Slapped Ham guys were here the last couple of days, right? There's lots of different channels like Top 5 Spooky, like all these different kind of things. In my mind, like if they want to do a virtual brand, you sort of roll them all up and get them to agree that they're all going to do like a food product, and then you can give them each like an individual menu item. And in that world, you can also then create like competitive dynamics in between the fandom. So you could say, hey, hey guys, like order my Slapped Ham product, we've got to beat this other channel and do this and do that. And so I think in solving that middle piece, there's not only collaboration internally, like with the creators themselves around a specific fandom, or even pitting two fandoms against each other, right? Like, you could be like, yeah, we're going to get the rugby fandom to verse the cricket fandom and then like launch a sports brand, right? But the other big one there is obviously brands, right? And bringing brands in to basically like bolster that with a lot of cash. And that's one where, we work a lot with brands, like, the big FMCG players are a good example. None of them have ideas about how to tackle this space, right? You've heard a lot across these last couple of days about how brands interact with creators and stuff like that, but we're just so early on this curve.
How long does it take a creator to build a brand? Like, so you're a creator, let's say you're a middle-class creator. Let's say you've got, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million followers, or whatever a middle-class creator is. I don't know, let's assume that it's something like that. And you're like, what, I want to build a sustainable brand. I talk to, and I'll give you an example from the US. There is a creator called the Idaho Painter. And if you want to know how to paint houses, this is the guy you go to. And he has built a business with great videos about painting houses, internal, external. But he also has a brand of paint cans and paint sprayers and paint supplies and brushes. And he even is trying to get someone to invest in his company so he can put a warehouse in Idaho. How long does it take to do that sort of thing? And whether it's food or something else. But if your life cycle is only a year or two, do you have time to build a brand?
Yeah, and I think the answer to that fundamentally is no, which is why I think like my business is pretty interesting, right? Because it's this kind of like point and click infrastructure. So like I come along, I go, yeah, man, I just play heaps of Fortnite, and like my audience is all 9 years old. They're going to grow up in 2 years and think I'm a loser. So I got to move quickly, right? This is a very real thing, Jim. Like Fortnite players in particular are acutely aware of this. Like, they come on, they're like, yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're playing Fortnite. And then in 2 years, these kids are like, man, I can't believe you used to watch this guy, right? Like, it's so brutal. It's
like
so
the Power
brutal.
Rangers.
Yeah, and so I think that, like, there will be a lot of big businesses in this, like, white label infrastructure space, these pipes and rails type space, right? I think the ones that will be enduring are the ones that think about this from a marketplace perspective, wherein merchants, brands, creators, and consumers can all kind of like interact, and that there's pieces at play here. The problem with that is like building those businesses is really difficult, right? And that's hard.
Well, what do you think of Dobrik's Pizza? Is that a good idea for David? I mean, he's gone through some hard patches, but is that a good thing? And should a creator open up a pizza place or a boba tea place or something?
I mean, I think it's fantastic. Like, and the numbers, despite Dave, like, people say, yo, David, you fell off, man. You washed up, dude. You had that documentary where Casey, like, exposed you. I mean, people still lined up 9.5 hours for a piece of, like, cold pizza at Dobrik's. Like, it's clear that, like, regardless of all the crap that went on, there's still a ton of true fans that David has, right? And if David, he obviously wants his, like, his brick and mortar one where he can control that quality. But if he suddenly just like partner with Domino's, or he partners with like Pizza Hut, right? And they just repackage that product and it's like, yo, that's the Dobrik, and he can send that across stores all over the world. I mean, even if his margins, he's taken like 1, 2, 5 cents a slice, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. And so talk about the way the money works in your business. What do the bakers, chefs, the food creators get? What do you get? What does the creator get? And is that different based on the type of product?
Yeah, so it definitely is. The way that we think about it is it's like very similar to a standard kind of like franchising arrangement. So it's 10 to 15% on gross sale of the final product. We obviously have to account for delivery fees. We have to account for food cost, right, which is absorbed by the kitchen. They, again, are absorbing things like staffing costs, rent, utilities, all of that. I guess the beauty in this model is that, especially with like a hub and spoke kind of idea, you're just bolting this business on, right? And so, if you're a kitchen, like the kitchen game, I don't know if anyone else has like worked in F&B or you did that as a job through university or whatever. It is like a grueling game. Like it is super, super hard. And so the idea that you can just like bolt on more sales at any given time, even if it's like 10, 15, 20 bucks a week, any operator is going to take that. Because your fixed costs don't change, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So more questions here about building things in this way or other ways? Got a question over here.
Hi there. My question is not so much about building stuff, but about giving back. So I'm really interested in anything that you've seen in terms of creators supporting causes that they care about, whether it's the environment, whether it's mental health, whether it's education, how that gets collated and given some impact in meaningful ways across the world.
Yeah, I can talk about it. The answer I'm going to give is going to probably not be so heartwarming. So a good example, one of my investors did an enormous charity subathon, raised $100,000 in donations. $40,000 of that was credit card chargeback fraud. And so he actually ended up stepping up to the plate and donating the $40,000 to match it, to basically mean that he didn't have to go back to the charity and say, hey, we actually only raised 60, but he will never do one of those ever again. Yeah, so typically, the way that it works on these platforms, so YouTube or Twitch, right, you do these donos, right? So it's a donation system. So you'll say, hey, I don't know, it'll be Big Cat 93 donated $20, right? And you'll be like, hey, thanks Big Cat 93, thanks for the donation. That's going to a great cause in, an animal sanctuary or a recycling facility or whatever. The problem with that is the way that all of these payment gateways are built, right? People just spoof it with PayPal and then they'll just pull the credit cards. This is a known issue across every known marketplace in the world, by the way. So Uber, Grab, everyone has credit card chargeback fraud. So he did that and he was stunned. He couldn't believe that $40,000 was pulled back out of it. And so that's why for him, Click It is very exciting because it's you have to buy a real product. If there's chargeback fraud, that's on the Grab Food or the Uber Eats or the whatever. But that's real cold hard cash that then can go to different things. And again, if we end up with excess inventory, it's hey, let's put it into a food bank or let's put it into a wastage program that has meaningful and tangible kind of results, day of impact. Yeah, I just think it's a really hard space and nobody's worked it out properly. I also think that large scale NGOs, for instance, Red Cross, there's one in Australia that we're talking to at the moment called Oz Harvest. They just don't have the muscle to work with creators at all. You're dealing with people who typically were very, very senior in the corporate world, right? Were probably company directors who have then taken these jobs pro bono, admittedly quite senior, quite high up. And then you've got Gen Z TikTokers who are doing body rolls, and the disconnect between those two, there's no unified bridge for them to kind of talk, converse, and make meaningful campaigns together. So hopefully we can solve that.
Yeah, I hope so too. I was talking to a couple of the creators who are here who are, the TikToker MG who is here who's doing, was a marine biologist and doing stuff in the wildlife space. Another one who was here, one of the VTubers who's also doing it, and they need to go to National Geographic, the NGO, and become a young explorer. But I worked with National Geographic, and they were just clueless about the creators. They had no idea. They're it was every single one of your young scientists under the age of 30 is doing TikTok, is doing YouTube. They're we don't care. I'm how could you not care? Because you live on donations, and who's going to give you donations in 10 years? Their audience, not your audience that's dying. Let's talk about some of the other ways, some of the other products that are out there. I'm just kind of curious as to your take and to all of what you guys think. We had a couple of people talking about socks this week. Are socks a good way for creators to make money? I know Hank Green does it, Cat K does it. Socks? Really?
Yeah, I think all the typical types of merchandising, accessorizing type products are fine and interesting. I guess the biggest thing specifically with merchandise is where it comes from. And people have been stung really badly on this because loads of it's coming from Bangladesh, out of the RMG sector. People aren't tracing this stuff. It's not coming from green facilities, and then it just ends up being a whole debacle. I think if it's like sustainably produced and there's like, again, tied to like real outcomes, tangible things, then yeah. It's
A lot of risk, a lot of risk. I mean, you got coffee, like Emma Chamberlain Coffee and other people doing coffee. Same issues though, right?
Similar, yeah. I think coffee's a huge one. The market out here for that is Indonesia. There's more digital coffee chains in Indonesia than the whole region combined, right? So you've got like Kopi Kenangan, you've got Foray Coffee, you've got Flash Coffee out there. Like digital coffee is like its own, it's an industry unto itself. Yet to see anyone efficiently tap that market. Hopefully it's me. But I think it's a great product. Beverages as well. You mentioned boba tea. I think that's a huge one. Certainly in the US, that's like a massive market which is grossly undertapped. And what's interesting as well, there's a huge arbitrage bridge between products that we see, especially markets like China, and then bringing that out to the West. So a good example is like, on Douyin, like, which was, is Chinese TikTok. Alcoholic boba tea was huge in China, right? And then now it's starting to get like a little bit of traction in the US, but if someone really like picked that up and ran with it, even like out here, it would be a massive, massive business.
All right, so getting drunk on boba tea.
Yeah.
Love it. What about, you were down on classes when you're talking to Desire. What's the, classes seem like a great way for creators to make money, and there are a bunch of people doing it.
I'm super short edutech. I'm like the biggest non-believer in edutech ever. I think it's like a really, really, really hard game. It's super difficult. Like you look at, so today, like Prosus, which is Baiju's largest investor by far, has cut the valuation roughly 73%. So Baiju, for those who don't know, is like the largest edutech company in India, typically aimed at smaller children. The problem is, Jim, like, you're dealing with a consumer, i.e. a child. Your average acquisition cost needs to see them on the platform for 8 months. Children are super fickle these days, and they're only like their attention's only dropping, right? You're competing against apps like TikTok,
Yeah.
And so it's a really difficult game. And so the purchasing of classes and courses and things like that, I just don't see it as being particularly great for a whole lot of different creators. I think if you're in finance or you're in law and you're like, hey man, here's like the insight track into spreadsheet 101, yeah, maybe, right? Because you're like a real big expert in a very niche topic. But, to be like, wow, how to like, film videos and be just exactly like me, I don't think that's compelling enough.
What about touring? I mean, we've seen some podcasters. We're talking with one of them, with Timmy from Acast about. It's like, guy did 5,000 people at his live podcast, and he's like, I'm not working for the rest of the year. We all know touring is a hard business, and those of us who've worked in the events business. But are tours, is that a thing you can do, and can you make money, and is it sustainable?
I don't know if it's sustainable. I think you definitely make money.
Yeah.
I just think it's like a feast and famine type business. And I think that like, we'll have to see how traveling comes back and what type of consumers travel again. I think that COVID, like in the wake of COVID, has still just like shocked that whole market. We're still seeing places open up and tourism getting back to where it was, but nowhere near the levels I think that people anticipated, especially with older consumers, right? Which is where the money is.
What about other sorts of live streaming or VOD or subscriptions? A lot of subscription stuff out there where it's like, yeah, I'll give you this, and then you want to see my insider videos, it's $5 a month. Patreon is certainly going through some issues. There are other people out there trying to do that. You've got Cameo who's saying, okay, you know what, we'll do meet and greets for $5 or $10 or $100 or whatever. Is that sort of stuff sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm very bullish on that. I think, and it should come as no surprise that, like, obviously the adult entertainment sector is the largest space where that's the case. I think what's fascinating is that, like, you look at OnlyFans as a business, it's actually incredible. Like, it's $937 million in revenue, right? And there are not a single VC dollar, right? I think that the ways to support, I think that's actually an interesting one. Like, ways to support content creators operating in the adult entertainment space is a super fascinating question. We could probably have like a separate panel on that. But good example, like we at ClickIt, we absolutely want to work with these people, right? Yeah. Because they can't sell merchandise, right?
Well, they just did a deal with Teespring, with Spring, and actually it's now Spring got purchased, but yeah. And, we can go down this rat hole for a while, but we won't. But I will say it's interesting that they have a discovery problem.
Totally,
right?
But also a sales problem. Like you could put that stuff on Teespring. I'm just not convinced anyone's going to buy it. Like, for lots of different reasons. One, it's going to show up on a credit card statement.
Well, it depends on what it is and what you're doing, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, fundamentally merchandise, right? Yeah, I mean, unless you're just keeping it in the closet and you're just like staring at it, like, you know, it's one of these products.
What about
where,
like, you know, I'm just thinking about your business and that business together, edible undergarments or something?
Well, I mean, I think there's definitely a collaboration space.
It's been a long day, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, or behind the scenes, right? But, you know, fundamentally, mine shows up as a cookie, right? That one shows up as like, hey, what is this?
A cookie.
Right?
Yeah, no, I hear you. What else? What are the types of things on people's minds about potential ways for creators to make money beyond just selling hoodies or AdSense? Anything else? Subscriptions in general, like subscriptions to what? Oh, like a box or something like that, yeah. Boxes were out there for a while, and they seemed like a really good idea. And there still is, Mark Rober has a box that's really successful. I don't know, what do you think about the box stuff over there? Is it good? Do you know other people doing it? I'm giving you the mic now.
I've been on the wait list for, I just got an email the other day. Yeah, it sold out. And I was like, yep, I'm getting on that again. It's great.
So what do you think about those sort of boxes and like getting stuff shipped to you? You know, Bark Box and,
I don't know. Personally, I mean, it's just, I love the Mark Rober stuff, so I'm willing to support it because I love him and I love the idea behind it. That's my connection to it, yeah.
Vsauce just sell theirs?
Yeah.
Like Vsauce has their quarterly box. They just sold it. Someone bought that, but they're still running, and the Vsauce guys are a figurehead, I think. Yeah.
There was a company in Denver in the USA that was going to try and do this for creators in lots of different boxes, and a friend of mine went to work there, and then they quickly went out of business. So it's tough. I think this stuff is tough. If it was easier, we'd all be doing it. That's all right. Yes, you do. So
What's the sort of fastest grab and run short campaign, make loads of money that you've seen?
That's good.
In the food space or just generally in the creator space? Oh, absolutely, like NFT crypto scams. 100%. Like, these are just Ponzi's on speed, right? It's
Totally.
like, you know, I have an audience of let's say I'm a live streamer. I have an audience of several tens of thousands of people, and I'm like, hey, buy this token, it's going to rip to the moon. And the SEC wasn't regulating this, no one was regulating this. Everybody was like, hey, as long as I'm like not the last person off the bus, I'll probably make some money. The second one that's particularly been dangerous in the live streaming space has been online gambling. So, you know, Twitch.tv recently had to change like a ton of its guidelines because people were just streaming slot machines for 16 hours a day to viewers that were basically like, you know, you put one warning up that's like, are you over 18? Obviously, a kid's going to be like, yes, I am. And then just watching slot machines for 16 hours a day.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a problem you know, even back in the CSGO days, skins in CSGO, where kids like 13 and 14 were doing stuff there too. So
yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, so one of the other ways that I think creators definitely can monetize is video games and microtransactions, right? Like this IP that they have, whether it's like, hey man, you're playing like Fortnite and you're like buying my skin or something.
Roblox. I mean, Roblox now, anybody can build, you know, anybody can build skins, anybody can build items, and you can do that too.
Yeah, and I mean, it's crazy. Like, there are kids who are like 7 years old who are earning money on Roblox. It's insanity. The local gym I went to in Australia, you know, the owner there, he's a like mid-50s-year-old guy. He's like, Chris, mate, you're a tech guy. My Apple account's going up in credit. What's going on here? And I was like, oh man, I don't know. And he was like, oh yeah, it's pretty weird. I'm like, oh, is Maddox your son? Does he do anything? He's like, Matt, he's on this Roblox stuff all the time. And then anyway, his son comes like to the gym after school, and I said, oh, Maddox, you building Roblox levels? He goes, oh yeah, all my mates play it, everyone plays it. I'm like, oh, there you go, he's earning money. So like, that's crazy. The other last one I'll talk about that I think creators will probably get into at some stage, and how that all plays out, I think is going to be pretty interesting. It will fundamentally be in this like green/agricultural space. And I think that there will be like a large segment of creators that emerge here. It'll probably start with the foodies, especially the ones who are like vegan, raw, like I only eat root vegetables, like whatever that is. And then it'll start like going in towards the mainstream. So like, how do they come up with like agricultural communes? How are they like all tracking like their carbon footprint? They'll probably start building syndicates for these types of things. I think that's going to be a monstrous industry. It's just nobody's worked it out yet or what that looks like.
Cool. Any other questions before we call today a wrap? Oh, got another one over here. Cool.
Can be about anything as well. Like,
Here we go.
you know.
Sitting down.
Yeah, obviously, it's not going to be that long or that good, Jim. But anyway, my question. But
I've known you for a while. Go.
like creators are like you're talking about Laserbeam and like and how small and organic the growth is. And a lot of this stuff they don't have the acumen or the skills to do. And we expect a lot of creators, we expect a lot of creators, from them. Do you see these opportunities will always have to be built in collaboration with experts and suppliers? Or do you see a future where it's it seems that a lot of solutions go, oh, let's just build the platform for the creators to do that, and then they have to look after their own brand deals, their content, their editing, their uploads, their sourcing, their shipping, sorry, long-winded on that because Jimmy sat down, so yeah.
You can talk longer, I'm really comfortable.
Oh, I like to use many, many words to say things not succinctly until someone stops me and answers my question.
Perfect. Yeah, so it's basically we assume a lot of the creators, do we think that there's a world where it'll always be survival of the fittest on the platform Hunger Games, or whether it'll be built-in collaboration kind of thing? Matt, I think that's a really interesting one. I think that in the most recent capital super cycle, we saw an absolute boatload of companies spin up that were oh, create a platform this, create a platform that. No one uses them, right? Creators just want to make videos. Laserbeam's a great example. He, I sent him investor updates. I sent him this, I sent him that. He's like, mate, so sick. What's going on? I'm like, do you read any emails? He's like, no, not a chance. So only ever when I catch up with him in person, then he hears about it. He's like, that's really cool. I think that so I don't know, maybe I maintain a somewhat unpopular view here. I think that the emergence of TikTok houses and esports orgs and all this type of stuff will mean that we'll probably go down some dark rabbit hole of people going out there, finding talent, building it and inculcating it, right? I think the next Mr. Beast will be made. It won't be quote unquote born. And who knows, Mr. Beast will probably make that person.
Well,
right?
It's interesting to talk about. We're running out of time, but I do think you see, one of the top talent agents out there who actually was one of the co-founders of Lonely Girl, who went over to take over Charlie D'Amelio Enterprises, who's then turned Charlie D'Amelio and the family and all that into a huge group of creators. We see Mr. Beast, who's brought a lot of good talent around himself to help do that, including people who've been in the industry for a while. But I'm going to disagree with you because I think the next big Mr. Beast just graduated from 8th grade and just graduated from Minecraft or Roblox. We don't know what they're going to create in, but it's not going to be any of the platforms you've seen here today.
Yeah, I actually do think conceding, I take that point and I hear that. I think it's just
By the way, I think you're probably right too. There's going to be a couple of them.
Yeah, I just think it's
not arguing, I'm just...
No, it's just the Star Wars example, right? It'll be some, if Mr. Beast, if Jimmy's Darth Sidious, he'll find his Padawan and then he'll, the same way Naz Daily did, right? You go watch those videos, it's he's trained this guy within an inch. It's uncanny, right? So yeah, I think it's exciting, and the space is it's new, it's fresh, it's fun, it's funky, and yeah, if you guys have any other questions that weren't answered today, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. More than happy to shoot a response.
Okay, I have one last question for everyone. There is no good answer to this, but we've talked a lot about life cycle of creators. We talked a lot about Mr. Beast. Nobody asked about the life cycle of Mr. Beast. What's the life cycle of Mr. Beast? Is it 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? Is he Walt Disney? Indefinite.
Because he's taking that as a business, and I know that you said, oh, but he's not the creator. Oh, yes, he is.
Oh, he's a total creator.
And the more creators we have like that, even manufactured. Justin Bieber is manufactured. Is it? So they took him from the platform and manufactured. Guns N' Roses were manufactured. So until we have that, all the big money will go to traditional media, not the new media. If they have to spend 100 million this year, we'll never have to spend 100 million in US for TV ads. It's one contract. I go to one agency. I give them one. Imagine taking $100 million and spending it with creators. That's a hell of a business now at this moment. But if you are some kind of future MCN and create a hub of creators, just like Nas or this one or that one, doesn't have to be. Let's call it medium creators, 2 million, 5 million, what's up. That's the business. Then digital will win. For now.
Boy, we're going to argue some stuff over drinks tonight. I think there's plus and minus. All right, how about Mr. Beast? How many people think he's, 10 years, we won't really be talking about him that much? Anybody? 20 years? What's that? What he's doing now is to be sustainable, right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm struck by like how with Ryan's toys, they're animating Ryan because Ryan's going to go through puberty at some point. The Beast Empire will sustain.
Yeah.
All right, so the Beast Empire will endure. All right, you guys, you've endured enough. Thank you very much. End of day 3 of Creator World. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Jasper, and all the team for putting this on. And there's some more stuff happening tomorrow, meet and greet. So if you want to meet some great creators you haven't met already, I bet it's going to be fun, right? Screamy, screamy. We haven't had a lot of screamy here, so get ready for screamy. I'm taking the mic away from him right now. Okay, guys, thanks.